Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I'm Dr. Vaishali Kole from Center for Disability Studies and Action at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Today we are here to learn on the subject of fieldwork practice. The subject topic is reflection critical thinking in fieldwork, and the course module is social work education. The prerequisites of this particular course is to understand the basic concepts and theories of fieldwork. The objective of the course is to introduce students to the basic concepts of reflection and critical thinking in fieldwork. The second objective is to gain understanding and reflection and critical thinking as components of learning in fieldwork. The third objective is to develop skills of reflection and critical thinking. The expected learning outcome of this course is, at the end of the course, the student will know the connection between reflection and critical thinking. Second, they will be aware of the concept of critical thinking and understanding how it is crucial to learn in fieldwork. The fieldwork in social work involves understanding people, phenomena, context by actively participating in everyday life of people and reflecting on the experiences. It's a dynamic interplay between theoretical knowledge and its application in the fieldwork. This module discusses on the concepts of reflection and critical thinking in fieldwork on day-to-day basis. The concept of reflection is conscious, active process of focused and structured thinking which is distinct from free floating thoughts. It's said by Gelter in 2003. In reflective thinking, one actively, persistently and carefully considers and reconsiders beliefs and practices. In light of the grounds that support them and further consequences to which they lead, reflective thinking is a key component of fieldwork process, and it's a cyclic in nature, hierarchical, interactive construction process. It is initiated, extended, and continued because of personal, cognitive, and effective interaction as well as interaction with the social environment, said by Vuren and Boats in 1999. If you look at the theory of reflection, it connects theory and practice to make meaning out of experiences. It helps to understand the significance of an experience or an event in the field. It can be used as a learning tool to keep in mind the focus of one problem under reflection, and also as an ethical tool to take control of own life, letting one's consciousness to use social and personal values to guide his or her own actions. Again said by Gelter in 2003. If you look at the concept of critical thinking, Morey has defined it very well, that critical thinking as a deliberate metacognitive and cognitive act whereby a person reflects on quality of reasoning process simultaneously while reasoning to a conclusion. Critical thinking is defined as more than a rational step-by-step problem-solving process. It is seen as a systematic application of critical thinking skills to real life situations that can only be learnt, refined through practice within a particular discipline. It presumes a social constructionist understanding of the world whereby knowledge is a social construction, where the limits of knowledge is recognized, where the knowledge is seen as ever-changing, ever-shifting phenomena and unstable process. Critical thinking is regarded as a very different process from learning to apply knowledge that one accepts uncritically as true, reliable, correct. Finally, creativity is viewed as pivotal to critical thinking and to prepare students for ambiguities and complexities of fieldwork practice. Again said by Gibbon and Gray, 2004. Edward Glaser, 1941, defines critical thinking in three different methods. The first one is an attitude of being disposed to consider in a thoughtful way the problems and subjects that come within the range of one's experiences. Second, knowledge of methods of logical inquiry and reasoning. The third one is some skills in applying those methods. Critical thinking calls for a persistent effort to examine any belief or supposed form of knowledge in light of the evidence that support it and further the conclusions to which it tends. It also generally requires an ability to recognize problems, find workable means for meeting those problems, to gather pertinent information and recognize unstated assumptions and values. Other aspects include to comprehend and use language with accuracy, clarity, and discrimination, to interpret data, to appraise evidence and valuable arguments. Some other dimensions could be recognize an existence or non-existence of logical relationships between prepositions, to draw and put to test conclusion and generalizations at which one arrives. It also includes the ability to reconstruct one's patterns of beliefs on the basis of wider experiences and render accurate judgments about specific things and qualities in everyday life. So far we have discussed the various definitions of critical thinking and how it is practiced in the fieldwork in everyday life. One has to look at the reflective thinking and critical thinking simultaneously to understand and link to the theoretical practice. Let's look at the theoretical framework of critical thinking and reflection. The critical framework was derived from Richmond Paul's 1993 critical thinking dimensions that include the following key components. The first one is elements of reasoning. What does it mean? It means identifying assumptions, identifying problems. The second one is ability of reasoning. For example, raising questions, clarifying issues, generating solutions, etc. The third is traits of reasoning, effective attitude, including humility, confidence, and courage. All the three dimensions serve as a useful framework for describing and evaluating students' critical thinking and reflection. Now let's look at the reflection and critical thinking as components of learning. Reflections allows learning from diverse ways and perspectives rather than learning in a routine way. It helps students to engage with in-depth understanding of issues and problems based on their first-hand experiences. It helps to reflect on fieldwork activities, fieldwork experiences in a much broader way. Students can engage in reflective learning by following ethical responsibilities of client, colleagues, self, and professional, field settings, and the broader society, and reflecting on their own activities by asking certain basic questions. What are those basic questions? What am I doing in relation to social work values and skills? Whether these values I have or I do not have. Example of reflections on fieldwork experiences. One example on reflection of fieldwork experience is writing the field logbook and recording. It helps the students to reflect on your own activities of the field, gaps, issues, questions, and arise change in the assumptions and the dilemmas. Suppose you're working with a person with homelessness or disability, you have to ask certain questions in terms of what am I doing? Am I doing according to the needs of people? Are my questions suitable in this context? Am I sensitive to the dignity of a person? All these questions are reflective questions one needs to ask in order to work with the vulnerable population. The process of reflection is enhanced through practice like writing the fieldwork logbook every day. For example, of critical thinking, generating a conceptual framework from the field practice will be very helpful to develop a critical linkages and critical thinking. They group their experiences into meaningful parts, recognizing the contexts. They identify the relationship between meaningful parts and their experiences. Concepts emerge from meaningful parts, and the students use their creativity to link the flow of relationship of these concepts. The various questions I need to ask as a student, social worker, in order to connect to the mind, in order to connect with the critical thinking and reflection. These reflective questions are foundations of building social work professional values in you in order to work in the field practice and in order to work in the diverse settings of social work profession. Now let's look at the various stages of reflection in the fieldwork practice. There are 6 stages of reflection given by Gibbs in 1988. The first and foremost stage of reflection is description. You're describing the events, the problems, the activity, their experiences, and asking the first fundamental question, what happened? In the field of describe the events, people, context, consequences, and so on. If you look at the disaster setting and look at work with all the vulnerable population, you will also understand and describe each and every event happened to the vulnerable population and ask the fundamental question, what happened? The second stage is feelings. Feelings trigger reflections. Students ask themselves, what were you thinking and feeling at the time of the event? The perception about an event or a problem starts forming these feelings. For example, again, if you're working with homeless population, you may feel vulnerable at the end of the day. So you need to acknowledge your feelings as a reflective thinker in the fieldwork practice. The third stage is evaluation. Students start thinking, evaluating their experiences as good or bad. They write down good and bad experiences and explain why they are good and why they are bad. So one need to reflect on the factors affecting the good and bad experiences. The fourth stage is analysis. Students make sense out of their experiences. They interpret the meaning attached to a particular event or a problem. They respond to a situation, experience towards gaining insights into self and practice. At this stage, students compare theory and practice. They analyze their experiences by making sense and meaning to generate concepts and theories. The theoretical linkage is fundamental in critical thinking and reflection, and reflective practice in fieldwork. The stage 5 is conclusion. The student asks such questions like what else could I have been done? They also find alternative ways to respond to the situation and experience. The stage 6 talks about action plan. Students prepare plans and action based on their analysis and experience. If you look at the Gibbs reflective thinking cycle of 6 stages, it starts from description, which provides certain action, followed by feelings, followed by analysis, followed by evaluation, and then conclusion. Stages of critical thinking in fieldwork. There are 6 stages of critical thinking given by Edler and Paul, 2010. Stage 1 is unreflective thinker. Unreflective thinker is largely unaware of describing and determining a role that thinking has to be playing in their lives. And mostly they are unaware of the problems and issues which they have and also observing that in the fieldwork practice. Knowledge of thinking. Unreflective thinkers lack in the knowledge that high quality thinking requires regular practice in taking thinking apart, accurately assessing it and actively improving it. In fact, unreflective thinkers are largely unaware of thinking as such, hence fail to recognize thinking as involved concepts, assumptions, interfaces, implications with precision. The second stage is challenge thinker. The challenge thinker, unlikely or unreflective thinkers, are becoming aware of thinking as such. They are becoming aware at some level that high quality thinking requires deliberate thinking, reflecting thinking about thinking. They recognize that their thinking is often flawed, although they are not able to identify many of these flaws. Challenge thinkers may develop an initial awareness of thinking as involving concepts, assumptions, interfaces, implications, point of view, etc., involving standards of thinking. Most challenge thinkers have very limited skills in thinking. However, like unreflective thinkers, they may develop variety of skills in thinking without being aware of them. At this stage, these thinkers are also developing critical thinking abilities, may more easily deceive themselves into believing that their thinking is better than it actually is. So basically, to accept the challenge at this level requires that these thinkers gain insight into the fact that whatever intellectual skills they have are inconsistently applied across the domains of their life. The third stage, stage 3, is the beginning thinker. Those who move to the beginning thinker are actively taking up the challenge to begin to take explicit command of their thinking across multiple domains of their life. Thinkers at this stage recognize that they have basic problems in their thinking and make initial attempts to better understand how they can take charge of thinking and improving it. The beginning thinkers unlikely are becoming more aware not only of their thinking, but also the role of thinking of concepts, assumption, interfaces, implications. The beginning thinkers are also, some beginning thinkers recognize not only they are of standards of assessment of thinking, with such as clarity, accuracy, precision, and relevance. They have a beginning understanding of the role of egocentric thinking in human life. Stage 4 is practicing thinker. Thinkers at this stage have sense of habits they may develop to take charge of their thinking. Practicing thinkers, unlike beginning thinkers, are becoming knowledgeable of what it would take to systematically monitor their role in their thinking of concepts. Practicing thinkers recognize the need of being systematic in critical thinking and deep internalization into habits. They clearly recognize the natural tendency of a human mind to engage in egocentric thinking and self deception. Stage 5, advanced thinker. Thinker at this stage have established good habits of thought which are paying off. Based on these habits, advanced thinkers not only analyze actively their thinking at all significant domains of their lives but also significant insight into the problems at deeper level of thought. Advanced thinkers are actively thinking about the clarity, accuracy, precision, relevance, and they have deep value about systematic internalization of concepts. Advanced thinkers regularly critique their own plan for systematic practice and improve it by their. The sixth stage is accomplished thinker. Accomplished thinker not only systematically taken charge of their thinking but also continuously monitoring, revising, rethinking strategies of continual improvement in their thinking. They have deeply internalized the basic skills of thought so that the critical thinking is then both conscious and highly intuitive. As Piaget has mentioned about self-realization, so these kinds of thinkers are deeply committed to the fair-minded thinking and high level of precision and control over egocentric nature. If I have to summarize the entire lecture, reflection and critical thinking are crucial part of learning or fieldwork practice. A student, while being exposed to the issues and interventions in the field, is also simultaneously processing everyday learning is what they see and understand. So, how critically and reflectively this element is processing into becoming an important source of knowledge building and making sense of what they have exposed to, linking it to observing, feeling, analyzing, evaluating, and finally making a conclusion of the entire phenomena of what they have observed. Because reflection and critical thinking are very connected to self of the person, and they are processes that will flow at the pace of the learner. At various stages of critical thinking make us realize how it is sequential, each stage is building on the previous one. An understanding of these stages in turn will help the learner to make a self-assessment of what level their thinking process has developed and at what can be done to make the next stage. Both reflection and critical thinking need to be expressed either through writing recordings on a continuum and through discussions with the supervisor so that any additional inputs or support that the student may require can be additionally provided by the supervisor facilitating it. So at the end of the day, this is critical thinking and reflective process is an essential element and fundamental element of fieldwork practice and social work education. Thank you.